welcome back to the third video about verbs. Here you see an overview of the verbs zijn, hebben and zullen, in both the simple present tense as the simple past tense. My advice is that you write these down. You will need them very often. Okay, first the two verbs zijn and hebben in simple present tense. I will read them to you out loud. Ik ben, jij je u bent, hij zij ze het u is, wij we zijn, jullie zijn, zij ze zijn. De verb hebben, ik heb, jij je u hebt, hij zij ze het u heeft, wij we hebben, jullie hebben, zij ze hebben. The verbs zijn and hebben in the simple past tense. Again, first the verb to be, or the verb zijn, of course. Ik was, jij je u was, hij zij ze het u was, wij waren, wij we waren, jullie waren, zij ze waren. De verb hebben, ik had, jij je u had, hij zij ze het u had, wij we hadden, jullie hadden, zij ze hadden. You see that the past tense is somehow easier to remember because it's just all the three the same. Okay, the verb zullen, I will read it again to you. The translation, you will see it yourself, is possible to will or to show. In Dutch, ik zal, jij je u zult, hij zij ze het u zult, wij we zullen, jullie zullen, zij ze zullen. In simple past, ik zou, jij je u zou, hij zij ze het u zou, wij we zouden, jullie zouden, zij ze zouden. Of course there are also modal, aspect, causal and passive auxiliary verbs, but for this lesson I'll restrict myself to the auxiliary verbs of time. Auxiliary verbs in Dutch are called hulpwerkwoorden. Literally translated, it means help verbs. Now the big question, when to use which auxiliary verb? The use is almost always like in English. Use hebben when the auxiliary verb to have is used in English, the same for the verb zijn. The only example I can think of is I'm hungry in English, where you use the verb to be. I am. While in Dutch you would say, ik heb honger, where you literally say, I have hunger. So where you use the verb hebben. But that's actually the only example I can think of. Zullen, and now we go to the next auxiliary verb, of course. Zullen is used for the future perfect tense and the conditional perfect tense. Look at the verb werken and sterven. Both means respectively to work and to die. The first verb is a verb which demands the auxiliary verb hebben with it, and the second verb is a verb which demands the auxiliary verb zijn with it. So the verb werken needs the auxiliary verb hebben. We can see that if we look at the present perfect tense and the past perfect tense in this schedule. Ik heb gewerkt, ik had gewerkt. The future tenses and the conditional tenses all use zal, a form of the verb zullen. Then the second verb is sterven, which means to die. Again, if we look at the present perfect tense and the past perfect tense, we see an auxiliary verb, but this time it's the auxiliary verb to be. Ik ben gestorven, ik was gestorven. Ben and was. And again, the simple future, the future perfect, both use a form of zullen and the same for the conditional tenses. Okay, for so far, let's rest the auxiliary verbs for now, for a moment, and look at the past participle. Later you will see how they're used in the examples I'll provide to you. The past participle is a form of a verb to express an action which has already happened. In English, the past participle is usually similar to the form of the simple past tense. For example, the verb to walk. The present simple is walk, the past simple is walked, and the past participle is walked. But English is known for the huge amount of irregular verbs, so not all past participles are equal to the simple past tense. For example, the verb to speak. The present simple is to speak, or speak. The past simple is spoke, and the past participle is spoken. In Dutch, past participles are usually different from the simple past tense. They're formed according to the fact whether they're weak or strong. This means there are two basic constructions for the past participle. Prefix ge precedes the stem of the verb. Then a d or a t or an en suffix is added to the stem. This depends whether the stem is weak or strong. The past participle in Dutch is used to form the following tenses: the present perfect, the past perfect, the conditional, and the conditional perfect. The different tenses can be distinguished by the use of auxiliary verbs. These verbs help the past participle to conjugate into the right tense. In English, the verb to have is majorly used as an auxiliary verb. Examples are: we've walked through the center. I haven't flown in many years. He has bought me chocolate. Let's look at the past participle of the verb werken. Well, here we see the verb werken. We divide it into syllables with square brackets. The en suffix gets removed. What remains is the stem werk, which is a correct stem right away. The prefix ge is added to the stem. The result is gewerkt. Because the stem ends in a K and the K is a consonant in the mnemonic device, an ex-foxskip, we have to add T behind the verb. The result is gewerkt with a T at the end. Here you see the past participle is a construction of a prefix, a stem, and a suffix. GE is not always the prefix for a past participle. If the infinitive of a verb starts with these prefixes, her, weg, ge, ont, and be, there will no ge prefix be added to the verb. Let's look at the examples. Here you see some verbs starting with those prefixes, her, weg, ge, ont, and be. Herkennen, verdelen, geloven, ontdekken en betalen. I think that went too quick. Herkennen, verdelen, geloven, ontdekken, betalen. You see the translation yourself. In those cases, there's no ge prefix added to the past participle. The past participle is in that case herkend, verdeeld, geloofd, ontdekt, betaald. Okay. Let's therefore look at the verb verhuizen, which means to move to another house. We divide it into syllables with square brackets. The Z is added to the last syllable. What remains is the stem verhuizen. This is the rudimentary stem, but we need this stem in order to see whether we have to add T or D. It's rudimentary because Z at the end of a syllable of a word isn't possible in Dutch, because the Z isn't a letter of the mnemonic device at ex-foxskip. We know we should add D, though now the Z is at the end of the last syllable. This isn't possible in Dutch, and thus we have to change it into S. The result is verhuisd. If you know to follow this rule correctly, you'll beat several native Dutch speakers, because many native Dutch don't know these rules and often make mistakes. So far this third video, we go to the fourth video. Thank you for watching.